And now I'd like to call upon Mr. Aleksandar Imsiragic of Serbia, President of ISAR, and his lecture topic is the fixed stars of the Great Incarnation. Welcome.
Hello everyone, I'm very, very happy and grateful to be here for the second time. And I'm very grateful to Gopal to organizing such a beautiful conference, because this is really important in this part of the world, to have that ability that West meets East. And the topic that I'm going to discuss with you today is one that talks about our soul. And I was really inspired by the first lecture we had this morning by Nick Campion, who actually questioned us what the soul is. And we can really feel that the soul has several layers at least. And at one level, we can say that soul is that part that thinks, or that feels, or maybe even something deeper. But when we are talking about that soul that actually travels, that unites us with different times, with different lifetimes, we are talking about something really profound, really deep. I would say the deepest part of our soul. And when we are talking about our own psyche, so to say, we can say that we all have one part of us that is actually part that we call our consciousness, our left brain side. This is our rational part, our ego, our rational way of thinking, and it is always defined by the main light that we have, and that's the light of our sun. Where we are wide awake, we are defined ourselves through our sun. That's how we think. That's our rational part. But you know what? This is a very small part of us. We have much bigger part that's called usually subconsciousness, the area of our dreams, our feelings, much, much bigger. It's very much connected with our right brain. Very irrational part of us, but still it is part of us. We experience that part of us in everyday's relations. You know, relations are just like being for itself. There is a story of relationship, just like relationship exists without us necessary. This is just like a spirit that goes around. This is the relationship by itself. And the part of that is our right brain. It is very much what we actually study in astrology. So, these two parts are really important, but there is a third part that is actually the biggest one. I call it unconsciousness completely. You know, when you dive that deep, you eventually touch the bottom of the ocean. And when you go deep into your psyche, you know, you have a thinking and then, you know, silent thinking and very, very silent, and then you feel, you don't think, you're dreaming, and eventually you touch the body. You touch the body. And you know what? Body is the most profound part of our soul. We don't know much about body. We think we know. But when I say body, I don't think necessarily only physical body. You have several bodies. You have very, very subtle level of existence. But that level actually means that you and everything you see around yourself represents part of me or of you. We are one. And in order to find that self, that kind of unity, we need to dive really deep. And for that connection, we need the very tiny light of the fixed stars. So you have very strong, bright light of the sun, you have very subtle light of the moon, and very, very tiny light of the stars. And if you are somehow connected with the influence of the fixed stars, it's very important that you are a good diver. Otherwise, you know, it's too strong. When it connects us with our unconscious part, it actually asks us to feel that unity. And only great incarnations, only great souls can actually use them on a proper way, that they unite themselves through the other people, through the unity. They feel that unity, they live that unity, they don't make the difference between me and you. And that's why they see the truth. They never see that anything is wrong in this world. Nothing is wrong. But in order to know that, you gotta be connected with yourself through several lifetimes. And that literally means with all of us here and everywhere, and very deeply with our own body. We need to be very grounded in order to live the influence of fixed stars. So, my topic is actually the story that, for some reason, inspires me to think what was actually the story of that important incarnation that three wise men or three astrologers, like 2,000 years ago, wanted to find and to define as a new Messiah, or the great incarnation at least. They actually were looking for a star called Bethlehem star, but if you go and search what that star might be, you just see that actually we cannot say that any star, any fixed star, was actually that Bethlehem star. It was some kind of an omen that's supposed to be on the sky. But we know nowadays that we didn't have any unusual happening, any especially unusual happening around that time. Looking like 50 years around the Jesus' birth, nothing like that. So the question is, what was that? And when I started to research that, as much as I, gone into the depths of it, I realized actually that it's much more like an astrology code. That these three astrologers actually left us a code. And it was actually a whole story about something that is important for astrologers, not for ordinary people. Three astrologers, three wise men who find them, they would see something specific, not something that everyone would have to see. And so the question is, where that star would be on this, heaven, when would something like that happen? The only really interesting thing that happened around the 0 year, the first year actually that we have, was the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, which was almost occultation, almost complete. So when you have these two big bodies together, you have a bigger light on the sky. You see it as a bigger light. So it is important for astrologers. They would recognize, okay, there is something important. And occultation of two planets in a sign, particular sign, would be important message for someone to expect that a great incarnation might be born. But that's not all. That's just the beginning of it. So what I found is that in 7 BC, we had Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Pisces. Okay, most of astrologers who actually done with that subject believe that Jesus actually was born somewhere 7 BC just because of that star. But there are so many ideas about when exactly. So one very common idea is that Jesus must be the son of a Pisces, because actually with him we started the age of Pisces. But what do you think? Would it be possible to have that kind of a thing, to have Jesus with the sun in Pisces at the time when Jupiter-Saturn conjunction was in Pisces? Do you think would it be possible? Just take this chart. I just took March 1st, 7 BC. And if you take, Jupiter, Saturn were not in exact conjunction, but you just take the sun there. So, how would you see Jupiter, Saturn on the sky if the sun is there? That means it's a, daytime. You cannot see it. You cannot see it. That's one thing that I'm quite positive he was not even close to that. He would be it's even more logical that he is on the opposite side of it. So, the correct translation of all the Gospels should be that the Christ was born of the Virgin and not of a virgin. That would actually mean something different. The definitive article indicates that it is about a specific virgin, in this case of the horoscope sign, and not a virgin as a descriptive term. Actually, this is the code. He was much more connected with that. He's a son of a virgin. And then, you see, for people of that time, the meaning would literally have been born of the sign Virgo. And if you say, furthermore, born in a manger would be explained as in the 4th astrological house, which means that he was born between 10 p.m. at midnight. And also, you have so many other stuff. Like, they would say that he was born, between the ox and the donkey. That's also one astrological symbol, because at that time, it was forbidden for anyone to actually live with the animals. They would never live with the animals. Of course, they would not deliver a birth, with the animals. So it's an astrological symbol for us here. So that means that his moon or ascendant close to the end of Taurus and the beginning of Gemini. Why? I will just tell you one thing. If you take the stars from constellation of Taurus, nowadays you will find the last star of that constellation somewhere around 23 degrees of Gemini. At that time, it will be in the sign of Taurus, because the precession of the equinox tells you that it was somewhere like at the end of sign of Taurus. And we have also the stars that represents donkey. These are stars from the constellation Cancer. You have a group of stars called Acellos. So you have several stars that represent a donkey. At that time, these stars would be in a sign of Cancer. So if you say between Taurus and Cancer, what do you get? You get the Gemini. Wow. So let's start. So I would say it could be moon or the ascendant, something like that. So then I start, to make some calculations. So to make long story short, I'll just show you the chart that I came with. So this is August 31st, 1025 in Bethlehem. And at that time, you would see Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. It doesn't have to be exact, but it was there, that was the time, in Pisces, that would actually be easily seen, from that moment, that's high on the sky. And we could say that that's a main marker for the time. And then you had the ascendant in the sign of Gemini. The ruler of the ascendant would be in Virgo. And not only that, it is 26 degrees of Virgo. And due to precision of equinox, every star that is nowadays, in particular position at that time was 27 degrees before that. So if you add 27 degrees to 26 degrees of Virgo, what you get? You get 23 degrees of Libra. And what do we have at 23 of Libra? Spica. And Spica is Alpha Virgo. Wow. Alpha Virgo That's a very big and important star here. And it's always that with the Alpha Virgo, you have another star that goes together, also a very big, very bright star. And it was just next to it. It's Arcturus, or Alpha Botus. It's a shepherd. There is a mythology story about the Botus. I mean, the story says that that shepherd was born from, that his father was a god. He was born from a god. The Zeus was his father. And here you have a Spica, Virgo, Alpha Virgo. Wow. I have two very prominent stars, in conjunction with the ruler of the ascendant. But that's not all. Here on the ascendant, if you just take 27 degrees more, what degrees you would get nowadays? It would be like a 27, 28 degree of Gemini. What do we have nowadays at 28 degree of Gemini? The biggest star, the Alpha Orionis. This is the Betelgeuse, the biggest one, This is the star that actually represents the, in old Egypt, God itself. It was known as Osiris, yeah. So, Alpha Orionis. So that would literally be a code, born from a god. And the Virgo. That's the code for a great incarnation that is, united by few big fixed stars. These are major fixed stars. And, if you get something like that, as I told you, you better be a very good diver. Otherwise, it's too strong. It's too strong because you need to unite yourself with the others, with everything. You need to be very grounded in your body. Otherwise, fixed stars can be really not an easy thing to deal with. They are too powerful. They are too deep. Well, this is the story that we have from old Egypt. They say the son of Orion. Orion is the only constellation that ancient nations, especially Egyptians, respected as a god. Not only as a symbol of God, but as God like himself, his physical appearance. Well, in one text from a pyramid, it literally said about Orion, to the Egyptians about Osiris, I fly from you, O man, I am not from the earth, I am from the sky. I have soared to the sky as a heaven. I have kissed the sky as a falcon. I am the essence of God, the Son of God. Basically, the mythology of Orion is deeply rooted in old ancient tradition as the Son of God. So it was rising, and the ruler of ascendant was an Alpha Virgo. Alpha Virgo and also Alpha Shepherd, this one. So this is actually a unique moment of time. If you take a day before that, day after that, you don't get it. And in his time, Jesus was not as nearly popular as he is now or he was later on. So who would remember, such a deal as about the, he was born in a manger or whatever they said about that. I mean, it's, they defined the whole story like 400 or 500 years ago. But it must have been written somewhere. And that's the thing. These astrologers, these three wise men, must have been actually, they left these kind of messages or whatever somewhere. So that's how actually the memory of it, the codes, remain. So we got them. That's actually the search for a great incarnation. Just as we have, here in many different traditions in the East, we search for a great incarnation, for the great soul that can actually have that unity. Of course, I'm telling you, this is the moment, the important moment of time, but you need to be a very good diver. You really need to initiate yourself. You need to dive that deep in order to take that vehicle that you got from a birth and to know how to use it. Otherwise, It's too much, People get the fixed stars, but they cannot live it because fixed stars requires higher states of consciousness. They actually requires us to unite our previous lives, our future lives even. Of course, people, we are already incarnated in the future. Your future life is already happening. It's not a question, because time is a circle. Never think that time is a line. Your future, you already exist. But you need to dive that deep in order to unite all these, past and future, and to become one. So, this is a vehicle. I would say the moment of time, open the gates. Just as we have now in a few hours from now, we also have a very great moment, of lunar eclipse. It is really gateway. It opens the time for something deep. And we need to be grounded. We need to really be united with our opposites. Always search for the opposite. Whatever is your opposite, that's you. That's the deepest part of you. Always go with that. How you do that? Accept your body. Never leave your body. Because you cannot leave your body. Even when you go on the other side, you stay with your subtle body, and the subtle body, and the subtle body. You have way more bodies than you can imagine, and each body has its own state of consciousness. So, follow the body, and you will be able to unite with the higher level of the being. Okay, so using that chart, I was fascinated. I used that chart as a very important chart for the civilization that we live in, because it's somehow marked the moment. So if it is so, you can progress that chart for some mundane events, which I do. In his chart, you had one really great, transcendental planets, even though it's a trine between Neptune in the 6th house and Uranus in the 10th house. I mean, in his time, of course, it was not known like that. No one could know about, could know about that. But the thing is, it was in the heaven. It was actually the reality. We had perfect trine. And the influence, for such a transcendental being must have been, profound. His Neptune was in a 3 degree of Scorpio, and as you probably know, 3 degree of Scorpio is degree of moon's fall in the 6th house. So was he able to actually see the dying people in the 6th house, the house of your patients or whoever, they are dying 3 degree of Scorpio, they are going into the other side, and he would miraculously, do with Neptune, trine Uranus, he would actually invoke the spirit in them. Like in the 10th house, he had the Uranus in Pisces. I mean, it was like a revolutionary in religion. What was that? Like a, completely different kind of a person. But basically, this is a horoscope of a healer. You just see that. This is so important that the ruler of the 10th house, if you just take Saturn, it is in Pisces in conjunction with Jupiter. Of course, he was guru, he was a teacher. On the other side, if you take Uranus, it makes trine with the planet in the 6th house. In the 6th house, he had really important planets, and all that actually gave him that deep knowledge and the message that was going with this. Take just into account his 33rd year, as we know, the year that he would actually, that was a critical or changing in his life. So if you just take a simple, like a solar arc direction and just move the Mercury, which is the ruler of ascendant, 33 degrees forward, what you get Mercury is right on a 29 degree of Libra, south node. Wow, it looks to me like really changing, it sometimes could be very critical or going to the other dimension or like that. In his 4th house, he had Sun-Pluto conjunction. You know how important that is. it's like a story of resurrection. You can see life and death together in one moment. So, and the fourth house is always telling you how people will remember you after your death. I mean, that's the fourth house. The 10th house is how they see you now. But when you go to the other side, the fourth house is actually the memory that stays there. So what we have here, he was the one who was able to go to the underworld, Pluto, and then again have a life to get that. This is just the important one part of it, like one story of that. But if you are willing, you can progress that chart. You can use that chart and just see some events. It must have been in it. That's what I do, and I love it. I like to do that because I really believe that great incarnations are here as the markers of time. And for great incarnation, you need a vehicle and a good driver for that vehicle. It's not enough that you have a vehicle. Vehicle is what we get, in our chart. And this is a great vehicle. If you have a vehicle really connected with the fixed stars, okay, you're ready to unite, but don't try to live ordinary life. You are not for that. And ordinary life means this is me and this is you. That's the ordinary life. That's the ordinary way of thinking. But if you can be with yourself, completely feeling your toes and your knees, completely be aware of it while you're talking to the other person, be with yourself. Just be present in your body, not losing your opposition while you are doing something else. You are activating that subtle level of communication with your own soul. And this is actually the driver. So we need the driver, and not only the vehicle. Vehicle is important. But if you get Ferrari and you don't know how to drive it, okay, God help you with that. That can be really dangerous for you. It's too powerful, it's too strong. Fixed stars are really strong. So, maybe the most beautiful thing in all this research is not only that we have in front of us the horoscope of Jesus, but discovering that his birth was foreseen by the Chaldean astrologers, discovered by them, and in the authentic way, they preserved the dates about his birth in the form of astrological symbolism. Now we can see that on the basis of their data, many years later, the Gospels were written in the form of coded astrological symbolism. And for me, that was a really very profound and very deep discovery. And this is how I relate to that. I really feel this is just that, we had that great astrologers who actually were able to discover that in those times. So, this is a book that I wrote about that case, and not only that, about the fixed stars, because these are pillars that connects us with our unconscious level of reality, much more with our body. And when I say body, I mean objective reality, something that is not so much about your 3% of your psyche, this left brain. It's even not the right brain. It's something really deep. And if you get it, just learn how to be calm in your own body. Thank you guys for being here.